All right, so hi, I'm Laurie, and a bit about me. So from everywhere that I've worked out, I'm a bit of a job hopper, I'll be honest. But those are probably the two most recognizable companies. And so I'm currently at Facebook, where I started my career at PayPal and other things in between. Right now at Facebook, I look after advertising solutions for those guys, for brick and mortar stores. So if you're a brick and mortar retail, and you want to advertise online and bring people and bring new customers into your store, that's what I design. At PayPal, I was doing something completely different. I looked after this product, which is basically a chip and paying card machine. Now it looks like this. It's so much better. Like back then, it looked nothing like this, and we didn't have a screen, so it was the early days of mobile card payments. Anyway, and yeah, as mentioned in between a few other names, co-founded a startup with a friend of mine back in Paris. I didn't stay very long, but it's still going. It's very successful. He re-transformed it into an amazing company. Dixon's Car Phone, and then PaySafe. PaySafe is also fintech. So a bit of fintech, bit of retail, bit of everything. The key takeaways from today's presentation. So the first one is, what are the different stages of product success that you're going to have to go through? They normally work like this: 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and then 10 to 100. What are the success criteria that you should use to move from one stage to the next? And then finally, what are the common pitfalls that you should try to avoid between all of those? A bit of a refresher on, this is called the Pirate Framework, and it's all about metrics. So basically it says so it's the sound of a pirate. I didn't name this, right? That's not me. But acquisition, how do users find you? Activation, do users have a great first-time experience? There's a typo, Jesus. Retention, do users come back? Referral, do users recommend you to other people? So NPS surveys, things like this. And then finally, revenue, how do you make money? And you focus, normally you would focus on different metrics based on the life cycle of your product. So if you're a product manager or an aspiring product manager, what would normally happen is that either your boss or yourself, if you're an entrepreneur, you would think, we need to make this product successful. And you kind of scratch your head a little bit and you're like, okay, well, okay, cool, successful, what does that actually mean? What they would normally do is that they will show you this, exponential growth. If you work in tech, actually now, I think even if you don't work in tech, everybody shows you this all the time. It's like, yes, we want exponential growth. It needs to really take off. And so you look at it, and most of the time, this is what's going to happen. You look at this here, and you think, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. I don't think it's going to happen. But, you put your sleeves up, and you're like, okay, let's do this. Like, oh, sorry, I missed. This is Mario, here we go. So you think, okay, I can do it, right? And I'm a bit smart. All of us always like to think that we're smarter than everybody else, and we think, yeah, sure, what is the fastest way from point A to point B? It's a straight line. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to go through all this cycle. I'm just going to cut straight. How am I going to do this? Acquisition. Everyone thinks about this. It's like, yes, I need to acquire a ton of users, and this is, suddenly my product is going to explode. So you do everything. You do display ads, you go in the press, you put out articles, you do SEO, referral programs, PPC. I'm sure there's a whole host of stuff that you could do. I'm not a growth specialist, but you would just invest a lot in growth techniques. And what's going to happen is, oh God, look, this. At some point, so here are all your investments. You invest in a bunch of acquisition methodologies, and at some point resource constraints, so either money or time or not enough employees, and you stop. You don't have any choice, you don't have any more money, so you stop, and then it goes right back down. So why is this? Most of the time, it's because you have a bad retention. So you invested all these efforts to acquire users, but in the end, your retention was not that great, so everyone fled your product. Yes. And this is what bad retention looks like. Basically, your acquisition efforts are like the water tap that you open it full on to fill your bucket with users, and there's holes everywhere, and the bottom doesn't hold properly, and those are all your churned users just going away. Now, you're probably going to ask me for some examples. I don't know if all of you have lived in London for a few years, but if you have, this was the on-demand taxi market. Probably is still a little bit now, but many like 3-5 years ago, like that really looked like this. There was everyone. Okay, like the timeline is not super accurate. So for example, Via Van is pretty recent on the market, but it gives you a good idea of everybody was really going after the market, really wanted to crack it. And what happened if, well, you live in London now, Uber crushed everybody. And you're going to tell me, yeah, but Uber, you know, they had the first mover advantage and they had more money and da da da. That's not necessarily true, actually. Okay, it's hidden here, bad design mistakes. But Addison was actually here before. Addison, I don't know if you were in London many years ago, but that's what I used. And it was like, they kind of started with the whole on-demand thing. You had some kind of a form which said, I want to be picked up at this time, at this occasion, to go there. And you could pay, I think, within like their web form or their app. Anyway, so they already tried cracking the market, but somehow they were not successful in taking themselves up. They pivoted, and now I think they do more like corporate types transportations. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. So what did Uber have that the others didn't is product market fit. They really knew what made the user tick, and they used this product market fit to reinforce their bucket and create retention. And that's how you build a successful product. So yeah, product market fit. Obviously, they did have some advantages from the fact that, you know, they launched in the US before, they had already been in this market for a long time, but mainly they acquired a lot of learnings during this time, and they put those learnings to good use. So now, okay, cool, you know, we went through a few examples. Yeah, that's great, okay, leaking buckets, but how do I make my product successful? Well, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Please give me a few kudos for those slides. And I put a lot of colors. Anyway, so as easy as 1, 2, 3, there's 3 phases that most products go through, which is 0 to 1, alpha, 1 to 10, beta, or your more traditional testing phase. And then once you found like a decent amount of product market fit, then you go all out on growth. And that's when you get from 10 to 100. So let's go through the first phase, which is alpha. And this phase is all about validating your idea. It's not about building stuff, it's not about like going crazy, and it's about really validating your idea. And so refining the problem, identifying the target market, and finally testing some of your basic assumptions. So refining the problem is, you know, for you to do it, either it's from personal experience or you've worked in industry where you've identified like a bunch of things that were not quite right and you decide that you want to solve those. That's refining your problem. Just making sure that, one, you're solving the right problem, and now let's move on to like solving it for the right people. So now identifying your target market, there's really 2 things that you can be solving for users. Either you're solving a necessity, something that they absolutely need to do. A good example would be HelloFresh. You know, you need to eat every day, but you're also way too lazy, so it's a bit of convenience as well, but it's really a necessity. So you have necessity and convenience. If you're below this, if you're solving a problem that is below convenience, probably don't go after your idea. It's probably not going to touch a lot of people. So you really want to be necessity. And then you can either be niche or mass market. There are loads of very specialized products for a small-ish amount of users that are really successful in their niche. So that's still okay. What you don't want, obviously, is solving like a convenience or something that's not a necessity for a niche market. Probably not a good idea. My Google site skills were not so good, but here you would see like a big red square somewhere. What you ideally, like your real sweet spot is anywhere between like necessity and mass market. So that would be HelloFresh, that would be an Uber, that would be maybe an Airbnb, although Airbnb would probably be at the lower end of necessity. You could also find something that is convenient for mass market or a necessity for a niche market. It's really about trying to position yourself where you know that the problem is important enough for your users, and at the same time, like, there is a market for your product, that you're not, 3 people buy it and then that's it. You've exhausted the rest of the market. Testing your basic assumptions. There's a lot of ways for you to test basic assumptions with not a lot of efforts. So no dev efforts, no building an MVP, not all of this. You can send out surveys, that's what I did. I think, if you went to business school or if you've ever thought as a non-technical founder about launching a product, you send out surveys to all your friends and that happens a lot. You can have a landing page with, a waitlist sign up. So you describe your product on the landing page and then say, hey, if you're interested, sign up, leave your email here to stay up to date, things like this. And then you can see how many people actually sign up. There is also one-to-one customer interviews. Those are probably better if you're thinking about a B2B product that is really specialized, where you need specialized skills. You will want to go see those clients one by one and understand what their struggles are, their needs, etc. And finally, small-scale testing. So a very basic, that could be like a clickable prototype, something that doesn't take you too much effort. If you're a software engineer, maybe like a very, very basic version of your product that you give out to your friends, something like this. The big thing to avoid at this stage is to try to solutionize too early. So a lot of people, when they get new ideas, either as part of being a product manager in your company or launching your own company, is that they'll be like, okay, I know exactly what my product is going to look like. And by doing this, you might not actually look after the actual problem. You're solutionizing too early, and I think this quote, you've seen it like 5,000 times, it's really fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So it's really important to understand your problem space. Alpha phase. Example from the industry, Airbnb. So I don't know if anybody knows the history of, we'll make this interactive. Who knows how Airbnb started? Some hands raised. But basically the founders and one of his friends, I think, they had a big event happening in their city. They noticed that people were struggling to find a hotel and everything was booked up. So what they decided to do is buy, I think it was 1 or 2 inflatable mattresses, and just put it in their living room and say, hey, we have extra beds, you can pay X amount of dollars per night, and that's how they tested their assumption. They understood that there was a need at a small scale because it was only in their city for the specific event, and they were like, okay, here's how we can quickly test whether that could be something that interests people. Let's just, spend, I don't know, a few bucks to buy air mattresses and see where we go. And actually, it turns out to be quite successful, and I'm sure they expanded at first to their whole city, new events, new cities, new countries, and now Airbnb is what it is. Once you have validated your idea, you can move to the beta phase. The beta phase is all about finding your product market fit, making sure that you build the right thing that answers the needs of the users that you want to target. So it's formulating a value hypothesis, building an MVP to test this hypothesis, and finally iterating, because you will have learnings all the time, iterating until you finally find this single of product market fit. The first thing is formulate a value hypothesis. I totally stole this from the internet, it's definitely not from me. A value hypothesis is an attempt to articulate the key assumption that underlies why a customer is likely to use your product. And it would go in a statement similar to, I believe that my target market will do this action or use this solution for solving a problem, and here you articulate your problem. Then it's about building an MVP to test your assumption. If you have not read it, which is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, please do it. It's a staple for anybody who's remotely interested in product or entrepreneurship or any of those topics. Please read it. Basically, it says that you should, build a quick prototype, test, measure, you get some learnings, and then you iterate again and again and again until you get to the expected results. So you build a quick MVP. MVP, if you don't know, minimum viable product, it's really the bare bones version of your product that will test your assumptions. So if you work in a big company and your product is huge and you look after only a small fraction of a product, so let's say, actually I didn't prepare an example for this, but let's say you want to introduce a new payment feature. So for example, in fintech, what you do, you have alternative payment methods, so you can pay by card, you can pay by bank account transfer, you can pay by, via, I don't know, PayPal, things like this. And let's say you don't have PayPal and you're thinking about doing it, you would like maybe just create a button and see how many people click on it, and when they click on it, you land on, sorry, this feature is coming soon, and then you can kind of see what the appetite for this is. Iterate until you find success. So obviously, like 1 to 10 is not like a straight line. It goes like this. It's a lot of up and downs. It's a lot of deception. If you find that what you build is not successful and it actually doesn't answer what you were expecting, that happened to me, and I'm sure a lot of you many, many times, that your assumption is actually not valid, and you know, that sucks. You need to scrap it. But by building an MVP rather than a full-on solution, at least you didn't waste too much time if it doesn't work out. So that's the idea behind iterating on an MVP. Finally, iterate until you find success. So yeah, okay, how do you define success at this point? If it's, okay, this whole presentation is based on the assumption that you're really starting from scratch. You don't work in a big company where you need to iterate on an existing product. So here, success needs to be quantifiable for everybody, and the metrics, if you remember the Pirates framework at the beginning, the metrics that you want to focus on for testing product market fit are activations and retention. As explained, you don't want to pour water into a leaking bucket, so at this point it doesn't matter how many people you can attract, it really matters whether those people, when they're here, one, they have a good experience, and two, they want to come back. And if they do want to come back, and if they do have a great experience, then you know that at least for this amount of people, it works, so you can start scaling. How do I find product market fit exactly? So product market fit means being in a good market with a product that can satisfy that market. And what are some of the signs of product market fit? So product market fit is, you know, it's a term, and you know, a lot of people like kind of throw it in the air, and it's a different thing to everybody. But really, the signs that you have been successful are you're getting great reviews on Trustpilot, you're getting amazing reviews on the App Store, on Google Play, or great customer feedback. If you're working in B2B with larger clients, they're super enthusiastic about it. You notice a great NPS, Net Promoter Score, you have great scores all the time. Even if there's not a lot of respondents, you are still getting great scores, so that's fine. Noticeable word of mouth. So noticeable word of mouth, as you can see, like somehow people that you didn't, you know, make effort in acquiring are still coming to your platform. They still, and they say, oh, I've been recommended this product by XYZ. Obviously, if this happens, it means that you have really strong advocates and organic ambassadors. Some people would create, I don't know, forums to talk about your product, or they would talk to you about your product in forums, or Facebook groups, make, I don't know, YouTube videos about your product and review it, things like this. Those are all great indications that you're doing really well, and this is maybe time to move on. Most of the time, by the time you realize that you have hit product market fit, you're already in the next phase, you just didn't realize. So the next phase is growth. This is not my area of expertise, so this is like this very bare bone, I'm really sorry. Basically, the growth phase, once you've found product market fit, it's all about scaling. So as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's all about acquisition, so both paid and organic, although for paid, please look at your cost of acquisition. This is really important. You don't want to just spend a lot of cash, and it's really expensive in the end. Also referrals. When you see that you're already getting good word of mouth, what you want to do is build complementary functionalities that are really going to emphasize this. So that could be like referral programs, even though they're organic. So for example, Revolut, they've done this very well. refer 5 friends and then get a free card. What does it cost them? A free card costs them nothing. But referring 5 friends, the customer lifetime value might bring them at the end of the day, I don't know, X amount of money. I don't want to estimate on Revolut's revenues. And finally, once you have great acquisition that are optimized, meaning you're not spending like $100 or $1,000 per acquisition, that you have great organic acquisition channels and great, a referral program that seems to be bringing in a lot of qualified users, then you want to look at how you can optimize revenue. So optimize all your flows. So Spotify, like all the freemium models, they do this really well. All their revenue optimization, so how to transform, convert you from a free user to a paid user. Like if you're looking for examples of people who do this amazingly well, look at all the freemium models. Maybe Spotify. As mentioned, not my area of specialty. I think this will end up on SlideShare. Yeah. There is a great deck about organic acquisition, specifically for mobile, by a lovely guy that's called Adrien. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name. I asked for his approval to put his deck here. He didn't give it to me, so I'm going a bit rogue here. But it's a really good deck. It's available for free on SlideShare. It gives a lot of examples. It gives you a lot of levers that you can really activate way better than I could. So yeah, wow, we went through this like a lot faster than I thought we would. Yes, this is the end. I can see the word. This is it. Yes, this is it.
Thanks for this great presentation. I'm curious, this framework, I'm assuming there's certain products or certain types of businesses for which this wouldn't work. Can you talk to that?
It probably wouldn't work if, to test your assumption, you need to build something that's already pretty heavy. So I'm thinking, I don't know, it's like outside of digital. So for example, I don't know, you want to launch a new logistics company. Sorry man, like this framework is not gonna work out. Like to build a logistics company, you kind of need to already have like pretty strong basis that you can't just iterate on very quickly. So this works really well for things where you can iterate really quickly, so you see digital products, but sometimes non-digital product if the feedback loop can be really fast. If you can get feedback from your users really quickly, if you're able to iterate really quickly, get feedback really quickly, this works great. If you need massive amount of infrastructure, whether digital or physical, before you can even launch your product in the market, maybe you'll have the first stage, which is the idea validation, but until you find product market fit, it's going to be, I don't know, I'm assuming, but probably years.
Because I'm thinking that retail is one that's, I don't know, like it's probably in between, but definitely on like scientific products,
yeah,
for which you need like a ton of R&D.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Like anything that requires a massive amount of R&D, that's really your idea validation, but it's not just your idea validation, it's also whether you can actually make it work. Ideally, before you even start this, do you know that it's technically possible that you can build this product? If you're still wondering whether you can actually build this, don't go through this. I'm sure there are much better frameworks that can work. Yes, thank you. Good point.
I am a product manager, and I've seen in my career a lot of companies doing this wrong. What do I mean? They moving ahead even with weak validations.
Yeah.
Why do you think that this happens? I wanted you to say if you have seen this as well. Companies going ahead even with weak validations in each phase.
Yeah.
And I think
so. My question to you is it weak validation or you just don't have the data to validate? Either way, maybe yeah.
What I'm seeing, for example, is, I don't know, sometimes even the C-level
Yes.
didn't have alternatives to, so what do I do, you know? I was so convicted about this was the right way to go, that this was a good idea,
Yeah.
that when validations do not meet their expectations, they don't
Yeah.
have plan Bs.
Yeah, so ideally what you would want to do is make sure that it normally falls on the product manager to gather this validation data. And ideally in the situation where you work in a big company, and I know that's the case for us at Facebook too, is that we normally wouldn't go to present an idea for a product before we have actually done all this validation process. And it does, like, it's not because it's a phase that it takes a lot of time to do this. It can go pretty quickly. And the more you get the hang of it, the faster it goes, obviously. Are you asking me for how can you, like, you need good data. Ideally, if your company doesn't have like a culture of looking at data, looking at metrics in place, it's going to be very difficult for you to ever get any validation. So either you go a bit rogue, and if you can somehow get the data with maybe a lovely product analyst, or I'm sorry, I'm just pointing because my product analyst is here, and a lovely product analyst, or if you can get this information yourself by scraping by, I would strongly encourage you to do so. If this information is not available to you, then you need to tackle a much bigger problem, which is you need to change people's frames of mind and convince them that this is the right way to start being more data-driven, and that they should probably make this a priority. Because you're never going to make good decisions if you don't at least see 90% of the picture.
Okay, sorry. I have another question.
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks for the slides and the speech. It's very interesting. I wanted to clarify, how do you deal with leakages and potential leakages when you are testing the idea? For example, Facebook, a big company, you designed the landing page just to check the idea, validate the idea. So how would you approach that?
Okay. Why would you? Okay. So it's different products, different things. So Facebook, guaranteed we would not put a landing page somewhere and ask for registration. I can talk about my products specifically, but I work on very large-scale products, advertising solutions for multi-billion-dollar businesses. What we normally do is every 6 months, and this is the same across all of our ads organization, we have testing schedules. First, we know what we're going to test. And then we, again, have a great support system. We have product marketing managers that go out there in the market, and they find the ideal testing candidates for us. So we test normally every feature with, I don't know, anywhere between 5 and 10 big businesses, and that's how we do it. If you're a consumer, that's great because you can do it really quickly. How scared are you that your idea is going to get out? You can either you're fine with the fact that potentially it gets out. Most of the time it's about execution. Ideas are easy to come by. Execution is really hard for most products. Or find another way to test your assumption. If this is really what you're concerned about, then don't do a landing page. Do like an anonymous survey. Don't put out to a bunch of anonymous people who might not make the link between themselves and will probably think nothing of the survey. I don't know. That would be my recommendation.
So the point that you made about why companies move forward without validation, what I've often seen is the hippo effect, highest paid person's opinion, and they don't have a data-driven approach, and they go, you should do this because I say so, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
We often see that being an issue. But then, to your point about how would you validate something without, I suppose, exposing yourself to too much risk, is that what your kind of point is? So if you validate an idea and it bombs because it's a bad idea, I guess you A/B test that and throttle traffic and only show that to a subset of the audience to ensure that therefore that your exposure to the concept that you're trying to test is limited to a small number of users for a defined period of time, which you can, enough time to get a meaningful data sample that's statistically significant before then ramping that up.
Do Facebook ads. They're Some of them are pretty, like I see a lot of people doing this, creating landing page with like waiting list, and then running like very cheap Facebook ads. Of course, okay, anyway, very cheap Facebook ads to bring just enough traffic to get some answers, and then, you know, you stop your campaign, that's it, no one else sees it. But yeah, good point. Thank you. Sorry, yes.
Can you talk a bit about how you found product market fit for App School? Because that was a product from the very beginning you said you were part of, or even you and your team.
Okay, so the story behind this is basically, so App School is it came from we noticed that there was some issue in the higher education market. So basically, if you've been to university, you have an intranet. At the time when I went to uni, my intranet was terrible, and when I wanted to check my grade or check my next class, I had to access the website via a browser and then zoom in, zoom out. I couldn't log in, it was really just difficult finding the button, clicking, it doesn't work anyway, it was terrible. And we're like, okay, you know what, like actually we saw this happen in the UK. And in the UK there is still a company called Campus M that developed nice looking mobile apps for universities, and we're like, yeah, this is what we need. So competitive analysis can sometimes teach you a lot. Seeing whether other people are doing it in other markets. So that's what we did. But obviously, French market is a bit different. There's always some specificities, etc., etc. So what we did, we saw this. We're like, okay, you know, a mobile app is actually we solutionized way too early. But when we started having conversations with universities, it's hard to come by the way. A sales meeting, you can't bomb it, because you have one person coming every 2 months, so you can't bomb your meeting. You have one meeting, you're super psyched, you need to be really ready. What we did is that we had an idea of all the functionalities that as students we would like to have had in a mobile app. We listed everything, and then we let the universities decide for us which features were the most important. We told them like, hey, those are all the functionalities that we already have available. Bullshit, we don't even have a product, but here's everything that we have, like, which ones would be the most important for you? And that's how we validated our idea. I think at the time we didn't realize that we were doing things in a decently smart way, but reflecting now, this was a smart move. This was a really smart move. So yeah, that would be one. Sorry.
Hi, Laurie. So you work in the B2B side of Facebook.
Yes.
And now it's grown enormously. I also work in a pretty massive company, and for me it's a little bit more regulated. Mm-hmm. But even in Facebook now, there's probably more checks or more steps you have to go through.
Yes.
From dev all the way to prod.
Yes.
So what are some of the tricks you use to kind of accelerate that kind of red tape, if there is any? Unless there is, and in which case it's amazing.
Well, in Facebook, you can't go around the red tape anymore, my dear. I'm sorry, we just can't. But I work in fintech for a long time, and it's also very regulation heavy. That's between yourself and your product, really, and your C-level suite. Some people are a bit more lax than others. Some people do it to the letter. So for example, at Facebook, I can't take shortcuts. Like, there is no way. Now there's a commitment that is very public about privacy. I'm assuming that's the kind of scenario you might run into. No choice. But we have created a process around this that makes the process more efficient.
Could you talk more about that? Like,
okay.
Like the steps that you have to take.
Oh Jesus!
I work at HSBC.
Yeah.
Product, as you know, and it's super slow, but it's not justified because Revolut does exactly the same thing, but they do it super fast.
Well, right. So things that I've seen that are working specifically like right now for us is we have a privacy, a legal, and some kind of representative that look after our teams or our suite of products specifically. So team of suite of product A, we have legal and privacy representative that we can ping anytime. We have anywhere between weekly and monthly reviews, and we know and there is a very clear process. We need to put together a proposal of what we want to do, how we think it's going to work, what are the kind of impacts. Basically, you need to kind of in French we have this expression, but preheat the food and then serve it, and there's nothing for you to do. It's basically all there. What we're asking for is a yes or no decision. Hopefully, ideally, if we do our job properly, the legal or compliance representative doesn't have to ask us clarifying question. Everything is already very clearly stated. We present for 10 minutes, maybe they need to come back to us in like a few days, but the process has been made so that it runs efficiently, although it is hard. If that makes any sense. Sorry, it's not super clear, but yeah. Yeah.
When you release the MVP, how do you prevent users from being disappointed by lack of features and lack of content? So that actually they try products, they get excited, oh, this is a great idea, I want to use it, and they enter and there is nothing useful for them, including no like content, and they're like, rubbish, and then they don't use it for the next 2 years.
If you work in a company that already has users, already has products, and you're launching either a new big feature or a new product, what you can do is make them feel really special. Like, oh, we selected you to be part of a special testing group, you're going to test our new functionality. And then, one, they know that it's testing, and two, they feel really special. Everyone likes to feel special. So that is a way that I've used before, and that works pretty well. Apart from this, it's going to be a scrappy product. So ideally, it's like the first of its kind. So even if it's scrappy, they don't know it's scrappy because it's the first product of its kind on the market. So, you don't know. Like Uber 5 years ago, compared to now, it is a much better app now than it was when it came out. But at the time, this was the only one, so it looked amazing. You see, those would probably be the two. I'm sure there are others. If you have any other ideas, please feel free. Yes.
So do you know of any tools or frameworks to accelerate this alpha and beta phase? So as an example, I think I came across Lean Stack, which seems like somewhat useful, but do you know of any really good ones that you could recommend?
If you wanna merge, okay, I shouldn't say this, I'm discrediting all my presentation. If you want to try to merge or really shorten to a very short time span your 0 to 1, 1 to 10, you can do design sprints. So there's a great book by Jake Knapp, with a K at the beginning. Anyway, I went to one of his training actually in Berlin, and he was there, and it was really cool. I would recommend I can't explain the whole theory behind it, but you can read about it online. It's called Design Sprints. And basically it's how you go from a problem to a testable prototype that you are actually going to test with users in the space of a week. So this is the fastest shortcut I've found so far.
The challenge with that, using, that was with Google Venture Sprints, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The challenge with that is you've got to focus on a big, scary, hairy problem within it. So you can't go end to end, let's fix end to end and make that the product. You've got to zoom right into what you want to be fixing. And you can do that within a week, and it's really useful, and it's a great sales tool, but it doesn't necessarily do any replacement in terms of 0 to 1, 1 to 10.
Ideally, the market validation you would have done ahead of time, it helps you for, at least you need to come there at the design sprint with a validation of your problem, so your problem is already pretty clear, ideally. Sorry, I wanted to say something else, I forgot.
I feel like that is for the beta phase, design sprints.
The thing that I found really good with design sprint, it really forces you to lighten up everything that is superflu. Please help. Superficial. Everything that is not useful for you, and like you want to focus on your MVP. This is it. A design sprint will force you to focus on your MVP to test a specific assumption. And that's...
Tell you what it's also really useful for, because you've got to get stakeholders from across the board, and some of those stakeholders are going to be those hippos. And if you can get that sweet spot, getting those guys in a room for 5 days, there's a few things you can do. You can lend yourself and your team credibility, so they can see what you do and the difficulty in terms of what you're doing. Then also, there's a part of GB Sprints which is called HMW, which is how might we. So you look at your user journey, And instead of going, we've got this problem, you say, well, how might we solve it? And when you start getting those guys saying that in that room, then you totally change the dynamic and the cycle of sort of failing fast with them. So it's useful.
And also to the point of, a chap at the back from HSBC, with compliance, they're always a pain in the ass. But you know what? That's the problem. We treat them as a pain in the ass, and we see them as a pain in the ass, rather than actually getting them on board on that journey with us and bringing them so that they can feel part of it, to your point about kind of getting the stakeholders in the room, so that they can feel part of the solution and not just be seen as the blocker that we're always fighting against. And as you say, if they feel as though they have a voice in things, then they start to contribute with new ideas, and pretty soon you'll have a feature list of things that you could implement very quickly, because you've got a ton of ideas coming in from people that you wouldn't have necessarily interacted with before, because of your process.
Yeah, building on this, I think at Facebook, our privacy guys, they are, because they're team specific, they develop a certain type of domain knowledge and product knowledge. So it also makes the process much faster, because they know exactly what we're talking about. So that's also helped, and I'm sure it involves them in a way, well, you're part of a team and we're all in this together, and and they're really cool. Yes, sorry.
You mentioned you're a bit of a job hopper.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, does that come up in product as an issue, or it's seen as a benefit that you've seen other ways of doing it? Because it's not like you need, you've done lots of different industries.
Yeah. So I think in London, people have gotten used to the fact that there's a lot of job hopping. I like to think I'm not the worst, but I'm probably towards the bottom. Not great. I'm definitely not great. There's a lot of negatives and positives that come with it. The positive is you have a breadth of experience that would be very difficult to acquire if you work in a single company, regardless of how many times you change department or teams, or still having this broad view is very useful. At the same time, by job hopping, it's specifically, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring the gender thing, but specifically for women, it's very difficult for you to reach a top leadership position if you job hop. If you look at, I think there was a study that was made, if you look at all the CEOs in big Fortune 500 companies, they're actually women that stayed in their company for went through the rank very slowly. Job hoppers, you start seeing a few in tech. Oh, there was one. Anyway, she just moved. Anyway, she's CEO now. She did a bit of job hopping, but it's pretty rare. So for women, don't job hop too much. Obviously, not taking my own advice. Do I get the question in interviews? It has happened, but yeah, in London, everyone's pretty used to it. So normally it's just tell me how, having so many experiences kind of help you. They turn this in a very positive type of thing. I did have a couple of times don't you think job hopping hinders, either you won't be invited for an interview, they'll see your CV and they'll say no, doesn't fit the corporate culture, or probably not a good candidate for me, so you won't have to interview. And if you do interview and they ask you this question with a very negative tone, it's probably not where you want to work. So yeah, if job hopping is for you, then do it. If you feel more comfortable jumping from project to project, then that's great, just do it. If you feel more comfortable staying in your company and launching amazingly new innovative products, but within your remit, then that's perfectly fine. I think everybody